Hi there, Sue Stockdale here again, and welcome to Access 140 of the Access to Inspiration podcast. Pamela Bisson is my guest today, and I met her recently in Quebec. She discusses with me her journey of establishing a non-profit organisation back in 2015 aimed at producing short films, podcasts, and a weekly radio show for youth. She'll tell us about how she engages these children in the arts and helps them to become more conscious citizens. As always, you can follow along with the transcription on our website at accesstoinspiration.org. Welcome to the podcast, Pamela. How are you today?
Very good. Thank you for the invitation. Hello from Quebec City.
Well, it's wonderful. And you're speaking English for us, of course, because normally you'd be speaking French.
Yes, French is my native tongue, and I get to speak English a lot of the time because it's a very touristic city, and that's how we met. But also, a lot of the content I watch online is pretty much in English.
And we're delighted you can speak English. My French isn't that great, so I'm glad we're having this conversation in English. Pamela, how would you describe what it is that you do?
I have multiple occupations, but really the core of what I like and try to do is about new media arts with children. So productions of short films, of podcasts, of a weekly radio show that we have. So I wanted to have a framework that would allow me to start those projects and would also enable me to get the grants and the fundings for the projects to happen. So in 2015, for me, the path of starting a nonprofit was the strategy to reach my goals. And also the projects are very different from years to years. So it really is an organic project and nonprofit that I consider like a lab because it really evolves with the needs of the community, because sometimes the city will be targeting us for another organization that wants to do a project with children, and then they know that what we do, and so they'll link us up with them. And some other projects are ones we initiate, and so it's very, very diverse.
What is the main age of children that you work with?
My target is from 9 to 13-year-old mainly, but I have younger kids that have been joining the club because it is a club. As a kid, when I was that age, before the hormones kicked me in, I really felt like I wanted to be part of the society. I wanted to be active and considered in my opinions and what I wanted to share with the world. And so I think that's what I do at my organization. And the kids get to speak up about all the experiences they have with us, but also they make connections because we get to meet a lot of professionals in different fields depending on the projects. So for me, my club isn't about training or creating young filmmakers or young actors or people that are going to be in production in the future, but just use media arts to create a spark in the kids so they meet somebody that played the violin and then they suddenly want to play violin as well. So it's just creating passions in them that they wouldn't expect because of the many encounters that were created by the projects they take part in.
Wow. Well, we'll hear more about the club as we go through our conversation, I'm sure, Pamela. And listener, I expect you're already thinking Pamela's got such a degree of passion about what she talks about. And maybe I should just give a quick aside to say how we actually met in the first place, because Pamela was a tour guide in Quebec when I was there on a food tour, and she spoke with the same amount of passion about food and about the city and about her work that she's talking about with us today. And sometimes that is just the serendipitous way we find wonderful guests for this podcast. So Pamela, I'm really pleased that you're already demonstrating that passion that you have for all that you do. Maybe you can take us back to the young Pamela and give us a sense of how you got to doing this today. What was your journey to get interested in the media arts for young children?
Well, I wanted to do arts in general, not specifically media arts. The media arts just was an opening with the era we're in and just following the pace of the world we're in. But if I had a chance, I would have been making movies and long feature films. But I know how difficult it is to get the fundings for those projects to happen. But I also come from experiences and a background of summer camp, which really forged the person that I am today. And I was a camper, I was a counselor, and I became also a director in a summer camp. So the connection with youth and empowering kids in the forest and in nature was something that really appealed to me. But I'm also very much into culture and cultural experiences like plays and performing arts in general. And so it's a blend of all my interests and passion that made me create the curious object that Le Machin Club is. And also being a touristic guide on the side for food tour, it was just a natural evolution of other professional experiences I've had in the past. I was a tour guide for high school students when I was in university. So for 5 years, I was taking students coming from the States or from various provinces of Canada into a field trip. So they were taking part in the Quebec culture and many different activities that were part of their trip. So I was their host, and it would take me from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. To share all the passion and love I have for my own culture. But it also really made me integrate who I am as a Quebec person.
And I know you love traveling to other countries.
I love traveling, and I think every travel you make, you get a little piece of experiences will transform you from the culture you've met. I've been many times to Brazil. Is my fell in love destination, but it really was just the addition of all professional and personal experiences that I was very much into, and also the understanding that if I was becoming a teacher, I wouldn't exactly be as free to create artistic project with children. And so I took a very wild path, which is creating something that doesn't exist. And you have to prove to people that your mission is relevant and you should be taking action with the help of other organization or even the help of the city itself. And so it's been a 9 years, almost 10 years journey for the project. But it really was the addition of the previous 10 years. And the previous 10 years were also the addition of my childhood. And my mother, for example, she worked as a project leader for the Civilization Museum in Quebec City for her whole career. So since I was 4 years old, I was just playing in a museum about sociology. And this was my playground. I also had my first jobs there as a tour guide in exhibition. And so it's just an organic understanding of what I've learned from life, from the world, and what I could be doing with my own power of action.
So, given that you've been steeped in cultural experiences since a young girl, what is it that you hope to convey to those that you're engaging with, whether it be a young person, an adult on a food tour from another country? What do you hope to be able to convey to those people that you engage with?
That's a great question. I think arts in general are opening up the boundaries we have in our own mindset. And I think experiencing arts in the many ways, if it's not creating it yourself, but just experience it as the audience or as a listener, you are developing your own empathy towards the world in general. And you are also sharpening your curiosity towards the world. And I think that is what I want to share in my project is in a school. And when I'm with travelers and guests that I meet on tours, I also wish they become more interested in going deep in as made a culture what it is, and also be open to the arts experiences they can overlook while they are here. Because for me, it's a food tour, but arts is the way I feed myself and my brain. And so I think I want to share that perspective to other people, generally speaking.
Well, I have to say that you did that very, very well on the tour that we did with you. In terms of those young people that you work within the Machin Club, how do they find the club to be able to get engaged with its activities?
It is more mouth to mouth than anything since the beginning. I was working in after school in my own primary school, so I was going on a personal pilgrimage into my childhood working for that school, and they had a radio project. And I was working after school trying to make short films with the kids, but then I had no control when the parents would pick the kids up. So, like, you're trying to film a short film, and then your main leader is going back home, so you can't finish. So, I completely understand then that this school framework, even if it's after school, wouldn't work out for the projects I'd like to do. And there was this radio project which I was responsible of. So, it was also something that was an over duty for teachers, but my responsibility was to encourage, invite the teachers to do podcast project with their classroom. And it wasn't so easy. I was facing a lot of like, oh, it's not on top of my list. And so I offered the school principal if I could create a journalistic project where the kids would be going into plays and music shows, and then they'd be speaking about their experiences and also be able to interact and interview the artist when it was possible. So that was one of the core projects that was also the seed of Le Machin Club, the beginning and the first sprout. So I started Les Chroniqueurs, that's the name of it, and it still exists today. It's one side of our weekly radio show where the kids will be speaking about their arts experiences. And so that group of kids who started that and the group that I had in the after school were the founding kids of my organization. And there were some kids that were 6-year-old then, they were in kindergarten, and now they're 16 and they're still around Le Machin Club doing projects with me. And sometimes I do have projects that are in partnership with some schools. The kids are not necessarily member of my organization, but then they find out about its existence and maybe they'll join for more projects. In the 9 years that the Le Machin Club has been running, we've been involving over around 500 children, but maybe about 100 that really had very meaningful and deep experiences that probably transform them in ways that I'd like to find out, because we're about to reach our 10 years milestone. And so one of my dream for the next month would be to get some funding so we could have a little documentary about the project and about all the kids that have been involved in the various projects we've been doing.
Did you know that we have more than 130 episodes now, ranging from business and sports to the arts and social change? And you can listen to them all by going on over to accesstoinspiration.org and discovering them all there. Although this podcast is free to listen to, it's not free to make. And we put our own money into this venture to bring more inspiration to the world. If you'd like to support us, just click on the Buy Me a Coffee link on the show notes and you can do just that. And then I can enjoy that coffee when producing other episodes, knowing that you appreciate the interviews that we broadcast. Now back to our guest. Given that you hope to then have some way of collecting that data in your soon-to-be anniversary, congratulations on that when it comes up. Anecdotally, what do you perceive have been some of the successes that have happened over those last 9 years?
Well, I think just the fact that the kids are evolving through now the weekly radio show that we started to host with a communitarian francophone radio station. And this is the part of the project that is completely volunteering on my behalf. But I keep on doing it because I see the evolution of our show. I wish a major broadcaster would pick it up and would be like, oh, come and join us, do the same thing in CBC radio, for example. But it's just the evolution of this show has been empowering kids so much in the way they can express themselves. And I think today that is completely something we should be working on, because kids are more in front of screens and sometimes it's a challenge for them to be expressing opinions on their own. And I think that is something I see evolving when a kid comes for the first time. Sometimes because it's on air, it's not a podcast, we don't edit, it's completely live. And so sometimes the kids will just completely block and they don't have much to say, but then they get a little self-conscious about their performance. And then the next time they come, they get better because they want to improve themselves. In the Machin Club, it's not, I never offer workshops. It's just they learn from action. And I personally learn better from action, from everything that I've experienced in the summer camps, for example, or through my travels. And I think those are the things I remember. I don't remember the information I've learned from school. I remember the social, I remember the extracurricular activities I was part of in. I think it becomes more meaningful. Sometimes the kids that are very much involved, they do so much that they won't remember everything, that's for sure. It's so abundant what they have access to. But just to see them evolve through that is something that it's gratifying to see them evolve without any like homework or framework. They do have kind of a homework because sometimes we get book releases in advance. So they get sometimes to read the book in advance of the interview we'll be making, or just to make their own a little critic of the book they've read. But they do it voluntarily. They're not pressured to do it. They're just doing it if they want. And I think that's another thing that really empowers them also. It's just to take part, even if my organization mission is to produce content with and for kids and a co-creation with professional. I think underneath that is always my ambition of making it civic education through initiation of media arts. So really giving them a chance to be heard and be active and considered in their community, even though they're not 18-year-old, they can't vote. And sometimes we are talking about kids like they're the future citizen. To me, they are already citizen. When I'm with kids, I'm not looking down to them. For me, they're my equals. They're just not as experienced in life than I am. And I think that is the way I'm able to connect with them, even if I'm still growing older and older. I see it's still easy for me to connect with kids.
It sounds like something's working if you're still in existence 9 years from when you started and you've helped hundreds of young kids to have that experience. Looking ahead, then, Pamela, what's your ambition for the future of the work that you're doing?
Well, I still run it on a freelance base. So some projects are financed and they get the grants, but most of the time I'm the one who's sacrificing my wage to be able to hire other professionals so that the result of the project is reaching my goal and my aspirations. But I think my goal would be that the organization could still live on if I'm doing other projects. My dream is just to have a team because I'm still running most of it on an individual basis. And the challenge isn't to create projects or to attract kids. That is easy. It's just ongoing because the projects sometimes are all just coming to me and I barely say no. So there's a lot of them taking place at the same time. But having a team and also getting people active on the board of director has always been the challenge because people are volunteering and it's not exactly their life's mission. It's not their passion and I can't expect too much from them, but we still need to have a board of director that does what is necessary for organization to be legal and to have the administration work done. So that has always been the challenge. So if I can feel that this is not all relying on myself, then I will feel that I've achieved my goal. But for now, it's still me. I see the 10-year like a real milestone in terms of I don't know how much time I'll be able to share that much energy and love and free work for the kids of my city and for the city itself, because I think we're promoting like underneath that, it's also like we're making everything shine around the kids. And I think if the organization could be a little more supported in its functioning, then I would be very pleased.
So, that sense of how you make it self sustaining without the energy, the passion, and a lot of involvement from you by the sounds of it to make it work.
Yeah, you as a traveler and all the guests I meet are supporting my organization indirectly. So I wish I could be doing a little less tours so I can be involving more of my time in the projects that we are running. That would be great. But I understand all the sacrifices that have to be done for this organization to be successful. So I've been doing all of them since the past 9 years. And yeah, I just hope it becomes a little more balanced for my personal life. And so I don't feel like I'm completely giving my soul and my physical health to the organization.
So, just coming back to what you said earlier, Pamela, about your own experience of travel and your love of Brazil, for example, and how you can bring different parts of other cultures back to Quebec when you've experienced other places in the world. For somebody who's never been to Quebec, how would you describe the cultural landscape of that city to the listener?
I feel very blessed to live in Quebec City. I've done university in Montreal, but I think my 3 years and a half in Montreal really made me feel like there's a lot of culture in Montreal, but it is a big city and I don't feel as close to nature. And I thought that going back to Quebec City, not only because my family is here, but also because there is a bigger sense of cooperation in the cultural organization that I don't think I would have never been able to even have the idea to start this in Montreal. And Quebec was for me the cradle of who I am. I felt more empowered here to start a new thing. And even though it took me time and I had a few struggles to make it relevant for some people that are very stubborn in terms of what things should be, I think Quebec City is amazing in terms of arts and culture. There's a great tradition of circus. There's a lot of visual arts too. Artists right now in Quebec province are struggling because there were cuts in the major art council by the current government. But when I travel to Brazil, I see it's even much worse. And I come back and I feel like we have everything and we can do anything we want. And so it gives you perspective. I've been going to Brazil a few times to see the evolution of what a really bad leader could do to culture. And the first time I was there for a performing arts children festival called Phil Festival in 2015, I was so in love with the organization and the ways they were able to attract artists from all around the world that are all curious and targeting the young audience. And it was such a great and big festival that I've seen going down and down every 2 years I've been, because they didn't get the fundings anymore and because the cultural government was just abolished at some point. And so it gives me the understanding that here we have a lot of privileges and we should not take them for granted.
So it seems, Paméla, that Quebec City is a great place for artists to be.
Also, for readers and writers, we are part of the Creative Cities Network of UNESCO as a literature city, and which has been also a game changer for my own organization, because the people who run this program, they are very open to all the things that are happening, and they see when there's a new thing. And they were the one mandating us for some projects. And so for this summer, we got a grant for a project that is funded by Literature City. The government is giving more money for Quebec City because we have this designation since 2017. And my organization was created in 2015. But I would say in the past 4 years, that's how we've been able to do very great projects. And so this year we got a grant to adapt a comic book series into a short film. It's called The School of Superheroes, and we're going to be working on that the month of November. Here in Quebec City is all about children's rights, and that's a movement that started in 2009. That started with the Youth Theatre of Quebec City, which I also worked there in those years. And so that was just sprouting me with the ideas of things I could be doing. And so when Le Machin Club was created in 2015, it immediately joined that movement. And you need to be mentored by one other organization. So it's the Youth Theatre that mentored us to join the organization. I think Quebec City not only is good for arts, but is also considered a children-friendly city. So now over 80 organizations have joined that movement in November. And we've been the one recruiting the kids ambassador for that organization since the beginning almost. And so the kids that from our organizations, they're more comfortable, or they always go on radio, so they're used to speak to the media. And so that's why we choose them, the ones that are more active. They become the ambassador of that month. So we have one boy and one girl in November that will be going to all media speaking about the activities of the month. And so it's another thing that I think was empowering me to create Le Machin Club, is the fact that Quebec City really considers children into the various needs they have, and also the cultural aspect is important. And I'm not the only organization focusing on kids, but I'm the only one focusing on media arts and giving them access to how these tools can become a way to build their individual self and have a positive digital identity. But that isn't about their narcissistic need of having their own YouTube channel, but to be part of something bigger, something that makes a difference for the organization.
I'm hearing you say that you're helping the children connecting to something greater than themselves, so that it isn't just about them, and you're keeping them up to date with the technology, the medium that is developing all around us every single day.
Exactly. I would have dreamed to experience the same thing when, like, I'm kind of jealous.
So, given that we're the Access to Inspiration podcast, Paméla, where do you get your inspiration from?
I get a lot of inspiration from the arts around and the various artists that live in Quebec City, but also a lot from my travels. I've never really traveled in a touristic, it's always involving a project I'm part in, or I'm being a jury in a children film festival. So I've never been really able to afford a traveling trip where I just enjoy the beach. And when I do, it's a workation, and I'm still bringing work and I'm just trying to enjoy the beach at the same time. But I think one of my first travel was really something that transformed my views of the world. I traveled when I finished university. I went to Senegal in a project that we have, this Québec Sans Frontières project. And it was really something that made me understand that we do have a power of action here. And I'm not taking it, I'm wasting my privileges and the blessings that I have had to be born here in Quebec City and not in a country where I'll never be able to travel, or I'll never be able to achieve some dreams. So there's a lot of injustice in the world. And so when you discover that perspective, you either do nothing with it or you see what you can do to make a difference in the assets you have on your own. And so in Senegal, our project was to create a song with an artist that is Senegalese but is living in Paris now. So it was considered like a white person by the locals there. And the song was to encourage girls to stay in school. So the locals would have very critical views on our actions. And I was told they should just send the money and not send you. I was told that the girls are the first one taken out of school because they will be able to help the mom in the kitchen and just running the house and helping with the younger kids. And so it was an experience that made me feel awkward about my privileges. And also because we were a bunch of Quebec people, early 20s, all gathering together. And sometimes people would just be complaining about how difficult it is to go in a toilet when there's no toilet. And I just felt like it was difficult for me to have access to pastries when special meeting we had when my family hosting me wouldn't and has never been to this nice scenery place in Dakar that is not too far from their house. They've never been there, but I get to go because I'm privileged. And so I felt like there's no way I'm going to be able to do something for them, but I can do things for kids here. So that's completely changed me. And it also convinced me I should be going back to Quebec City because I was dreaming a lot about Quebec City while I was there. And all my things were still in Montreal. I was still in an apartment in Montreal. But the family bonding they had was something I really valued, even though it was challenging because the first weeks I would be sharing a bed with two other girls the same age as me. So like a tiny bed that I would be sleeping on a regular basis. And to me, that didn't feel concerning. When I mentioned it to the Quebec leader, then they got to change for me. But for me, that's the way they live. That's how I should be experiencing it. So when I mentioned it, it wasn't to complain. It was just more, this is how I'm living in this family. And so they didn't have many rooms and not even like a roof over their head in some of the rooms. So I felt like it would be weird for me to evolve away from my family when I could have a great life nearby in the same city and just nourish this connection with my family that has given me the life I have.
It sounds like it was quite a profound experience for you then in Senegal and really changed your views on the world in a way and shaped what you're doing today.
Yeah, that, but also the experiences that I got in summer camp were so important because I went to a canoe camp place. And so we do a very long expedition and we had a 23 days. So when you're a 16-year-old and your whole life is based on getting a new t-shirts every week, you think it's going to make you feel better about yourself just to get those objects because you see them in the 17 magazine and things like that. But then you experience a 23 days expedition up north and go down rivers and you only have your clothes for the night, the day and the clothes for the night. It also reshaped the ways you see consumerism in general. And that really changed me so much when I was 16. I did it as a counselor also, but it also gave me the understanding and the opening of seeing that there were Indigenous people living and that their ways of life were similar to Africa in some point. Some communities don't have access to pure water and they're just nearby electric dam and they don't even have the access to that the electricity we're creating on the side of their own territory. So that's not something we were taught in school back then. The conscious is getting better and now we have September 30th to celebrate the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. So that was just a few days ago. And I think for me, realizing this reality outside of school really made me realize that not that you don't learn anything in school, but school isn't everything.
Your education for life has come since in all of those experiences that you've had
Yes.
in life there, Pamela. It's just fascinating to see how you're integrating all of these things into the work that you're doing. And in a way, I suspect, really nurturing different types of citizens in Quebec from those young people. You would hope that they would be more conscious and aware through just some of the activities that you're doing with them. Is that what you hope to achieve?
Yeah, they're definitely more aware than I was back then. I was delivering newspaper when I was 12 and 14-year-old, and I was just spending all the money I had on stupid stuff that I would also give away to my friends because they didn't have pocket money as much as I did, but I worked hard for that money. But it's just realizing that all that money could have been put somewhere to finance other projects or finance other things made me feel very bad about my teenage years, like about how wasteful I was about that. But I think kids today are smarter than we were then. They know more about the world. I don't feel like they necessarily need to go to Africa to understand what the world really is about. But I think, yes, I want the kids to go through their teenage years more tooled than I was and more critical about the experiences that could be beneficial for their own growth.
So just to wrap up our conversation, Pamela, given that most of our listeners tend to be adults, not young children, what would be your one hope or message you'd want to convey to the listener about your experiences and what they could be thinking about?
I think I'd like them to consider kids and youth and not look them down and not feeling like you're a greater generation. I think they have a lot to share with us, and you should surround yourself with more kids if you don't get a chance to be around them in your life right now. You should find ways where you can see them evolve, and that will give you, I think, hope. That may give you even power in your own life to be surrounded with kids, and that may also keep you young. I think I don't make my age just because I'm surrounded with kids. People never believe me when I say I'm 40. I just turned 40 this summer. It's because I'm still a child at heart, and I think you should preserve that too. And if you have lost your inner child, find it and look for it.
What wonderful advice, Pamela. Thank you so much. And if our listener wants to find out more about you and the work that you do, how might they do that on the internet or social media?
Well, they can find me under Pamela Bisson. That is my personal branding name. Before I started Le Machin Club, that's how I figured I could be online and be representing what I want to do, because Mary Poppins was all about magic, but I think I create magic in the projects we make. And so that's why I kind of stole that last name. I don't want to be sued by anybody, but it's just a nickname for online platforms. And then Le Machin Club is easy to find also on every social media, Le Machin Club and Le Machin Club. And you'll find also other projects. If you go on Instagram for Le Machin Club, you'll see all the other accounts we have, because the Arts Journalistic Project and the Foodies also has its own page. The little book club also has its own not Facebook also, but all its own social media. But the website is lemachinclub.com, so it's easy to find. And you can also find us on YouTube, of course.
Brilliant. We'll put all the links that are relevant that you just talked about there, Pamela, on our show notes so the listener can access them. And it's been fascinating to talk to you. I feel enthused and younger just by our conversation today, with that kind of playfulness and passion for life that you've exuded today. So thank you so much for your time.
No, thanks to you. It always is helpful to go through your own journey to feel that you're at the right place, and also to give you more energy to keep on going. So thank you for that.
Brilliant. Thanks to Pamela for her insightful conversation about the wonderful work she's doing in Quebec with the young people there. It's amazing what can be achieved with passion, energy, and a willingness to take action. If you've enjoyed the episode today, please share it with one other person that you think would appreciate some inspiration, or leave a review of the podcast on a podcasting platform that you're listening to us on. Your support can really help us to reach new listeners. Next week, my guest is philosopher Christophe Quark, who explains why philosophy is relevant in today's world. I hope you can join us then.